The shuttle descended through the docking bay of Station Helix 9, and Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the small window to watch the massive structure grow larger and larger until it swallowed her vessel whole. She had trained for this moment for 3 years back on Earth, learning languages that human tongues were never meant to speak, studying cultures that had existed for millennia before her species had even discovered fire, and preparing her body and mind for whatever challenges awaited her among the stars. The airlock hissed open, and Elena stepped onto the polished floor of the Galactic Integration Academy, the first human to ever walk these halls as a student. A tall insectoid creature waited for her at the entrance, its compound eyes reflecting her image 1,000 times over as it studied her with what she could only describe as disappointment. "You are the human ambassador cadet," it said, and the words were not a question, but a statement filled with barely hidden disbelief. "I am Elena Vasquez," she replied, keeping her voice steady and calm despite the way her heart hammered against her ribs. The creature made a clicking sound that her translation implant identified as mild amusement. "I am Orientation Guide Crix," it said, gesturing with one of its 4 arms for her to follow. "The Academy has prepared quarters for you, though I must admit we were uncertain of your environmental requirements since your species has never attended before." Elena walked beside the towering insectoid, her boots making soft sounds against the floor, while its armored legs produced sharp clicks with every step. The corridors stretched wide and tall, built to accommodate species far larger than humans, and Elena felt like a child walking through a world designed for giants. Other students passed them as they walked, and every single one of them stopped to stare at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to confusion to outright contempt. A massive creature covered in thick scales and standing on 6 powerful legs let out a rumbling laugh as she passed. "This is the human?" it bellowed to its companions. "I thought they would send a warrior, not a hatchling." Elena did not respond, but she made note of the creature and filed its face away in her memory. Crix led her to a large assembly hall where dozens of alien students had gathered for the orientation ceremony, and Elena took her place among them, keenly aware that she was the smallest being in the room by a significant margin. The Vreth stood like living statues of chitin and blade, their bodies evolved for combat over countless generations of war. The Sindari floated rather than walked, their luminous forms radiating an aura of ancient wisdom and quiet superiority. And the Korfai dominated the space around them with their sheer physical presence, apex predators who had clawed their way to the top of their world and then reached for the stars. Among the Karthi, one stood out above all others. He was enormous, easily 9 feet tall and weighing what Elena estimated to be over 900 pounds of muscle and scale and claw. His name was Thrake Volum, and she learned it quickly because everyone seemed to know him and fear him and respect him in equal measure. He noticed her watching him, and his lips pulled back to reveal rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. "So small," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "I have eaten creatures larger than you, human." Some of the other students laughed, and Elena simply nodded once in acknowledgement before turning her attention to the front of the hall, where the instructors had begun to gather. The head instructor was a Vreth named Velmus, ancient by any species standards, with scars crossing its exoskeleton that told stories of battles fought long before Elena's grandparents had been born. "Welcome to the Galactic Integration Academy," Velmus announced, its voice amplified to fill every corner of the vast space. "You have been selected from your respective worlds because you represent the best your species has to offer. Here you will learn to work together, to understand one another, and to forge the bonds that will maintain peace across the galaxy for generations to come." Elena listened carefully to every word, analyzing the instructor's tone and body language the way her trainers had taught her. "Physical capability, mental acuity, and diplomatic skill," Velmus continued. These are the three pillars upon which this academy stands. You will be tested in all three, and those who fail will be sent home in disgrace. Those who succeed will become the bridge between worlds. After the ceremony concluded, Elena made her way to her assigned quarters, a small room that had clearly been hastily modified to accommodate human needs. The bed was too large, the lighting was slightly too dim, and the temperature controls had been set to what someone had guessed a human might find comfortable. She adjusted the settings and sat on the edge of the bed, allowing herself a moment of quiet reflection. Back on Earth, she had been considered exceptionally strong for a human woman. She had trained in Olympic weightlifting since the age of 14, had competed at national levels, and had been specifically selected for this program not just for her diplomatic skills, but for her physical capabilities. The Galactic Concordat had classified Earth as a temperate garden world, a paradise planet where life was easy and evolution had no need to produce dangerous creatures. They were wrong, of course. They had never seen a Humanelli marathon. They had never watched footage of human ancestors chasing prey across the savannah for hours until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. They had never studied the density of human muscle fiber or calculated the crushing force of a human grip. They saw only a small creature from a supposedly gentle world, and they assumed that small meant weak. Elena smiled to herself in the privacy of her room. She had been underestimated her entire life. As a girl, the boys had laughed when she said she wanted to lift weights. As a teenager, coaches had dismissed her because of her height. As a woman, she had proven every single one of them wrong. And now, surrounded by aliens who towered over her and looked down upon her with pity or contempt, she felt strangely at home. She would show them what humans were made of. Not today, not tomorrow, but when the moment was right. She would wait and watch and learn, just as her ancestors had done when they stalked their prey across the endless plains of ancient Earth. And when the time came, she would remind the galaxy that the most dangerous predators were not always the largest ones. Elena lay back on her oversized bed and closed her eyes, dreaming of the challenges to come and the lessons she would teach. 3 weeks passed at the Galactic Integration Academy, and Elena Vasquez learned more about alien cultures in those 21 days than humanity had discovered in its entire history of space exploration. She excelled in her classes, mastering the subtle art of Sindari, negotiation tactics, and memorizing the complex honor codes that governed Reth diplomatic interactions. Her scores in strategic simulations were among the highest in her cohort, and her ability to find peaceful solutions to seemingly impossible conflicts impressed even the most skeptical instructors. But none of it mattered to her classmates. In the Academy's culture, physical strength was the foundation upon which all respect was built. The institution had been founded by warrior species who believed that true diplomats must first prove themselves capable of violence before they could be trusted to choose peace. And Elena, despite all her intellectual achievements, remained the smallest and seemingly weakest student in the entire program. The whispers followed her everywhere she went. "The human cannot run," a Vreth cadet hissed to its companions as Elena walked past their table in the dining hall. "I have seen recordings of their species. They move so slowly it is almost painful to watch. I heard their bones are hollow like a bird's," another student added, spreading misinformation that Elena chose not to correct. "One good strike would shatter her completely." "She is here as a political gesture," a Sindari commented, its telepathic voice sliding into the minds of those around it. The Galactic Concordat wished to appear inclusive by admitting a human, but they never expected her to actually complete the program. Elena ate her meal in silence, pretending not to hear the conversations happening around her. She had learned long ago that defending herself with words would only make things worse. Actions spoke louder than arguments, and her time for action had not yet arrived. The joint exercises were the worst. Instructor Velmus had designed complex scenarios that required students to work together across species lines, combining their unique strengths to overcome challenges. But whenever Elena was assigned to a team, the exercise fell apart before it could even begin. Her teammates refused to take the training seriously. They would complete the objectives themselves, leaving her standing uselessly on the sidelines while they demonstrated that they did not need human assistance. Or worse, they would intentionally fail, preferring to receive poor marks rather than share credit with what they considered to be an inferior species. Velmus grew increasingly frustrated with this behavior. The purpose of these exercises is cooperation, the ancient Vreth instructor announced after yet another failed session. You are supposed to be learning to work with species different from yourselves. How can you call yourselves future diplomats when you cannot even complete a simple training scenario with a fellow student? Thrak Valoom stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over Elena where she stood. With respect, instructor, the Korathi said, his voice dripping with false politeness. How are we supposed to cooperate with a creature that cannot contribute? The human is a liability. She slows us down and puts us at risk. Perhaps if Earth had sent a real specimen instead of this small soft thing, we could take the exercises seriously. Laughter rippled through the assembled students, and Elena felt the weight of dozens of contemptuous stares pressing down upon her. Velmus clicked its mandibles in what Elena had learned to recognize as displeasure. Cadet Thrak Valoom, you will show respect to all members of this academy, the instructor warned. I show respect to those who earn it, Thrak Valoom replied. What has the human done to deserve my respect? She cannot fight. She cannot hunt. On my world, she would be prey, not predator. I do not understand why we pretend otherwise. Elena remained silent throughout this exchange, her face carefully blank. Inside, she was calculating and planning and waiting. Every insult was noted. Every dismissal was remembered. She had survived worse than this. She had grown up in a world where people told her she was too small to succeed, too weak to compete, too female to lift heavy weights. She had proven them wrong then, and she would prove these aliens wrong now. But patience was key. After the assembly ended, Elena retreated to the Academy's training facility, a massive complex filled with equipment designed for dozens of different species. She found a corner where no one was watching and began her daily routine. Push-ups first, her form perfect after years of practice. Then pull-ups on a bar that had been installed for a species with a similar body structure to humans. Then squats with weights that would have impressed any human athlete back on Earth. She trained in secret because she did not want to give away her capabilities before the right moment. Let them think she was weak. Let them believe she was fragile. Let them underestimate her the way everyone had always underestimated her. When she was finished, she wiped the sweat from her forehead and made her way back to her quarters. As she walked, she passed Instructor Velmus standing alone in the corridor, staring out a window at the stars. You could have defended yourself today, the ancient Vreth said without turning around. You could have told them about human endurance hunting or your species' muscular density. Why did you stay silent? Elena paused, considering her answer carefully. Words would not convince them, she finally replied. They've already decided what they believe about humans. Nothing I say will change their minds. Then what will? Velmus asked, finally turning to face her with those ancient compound eyes. Elena met the instructor's gaze without flinching. A demonstration, she said simply. When the time is right. Velmus studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in the old warrior's posture. You are not what they think you are, the instructor observed. Are you? No, Elena agreed. I am not. Then I look forward to seeing what you truly are, Cadet Vasquez. Elena nodded once and continued on her way. The time was coming soon. She could feel it building like a storm on the horizon. Thrakvolum and the others would push too far eventually, and when they did, she would be ready. She would show them what a human could do. She would teach them why Earth was not the paradise they imagined. She would demonstrate that kindness and patience were not weaknesses, but choices made by something strong enough to afford them. And the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The day of the formal assembly arrived with all the ceremony and grandeur that the Galactic Integration Academy could muster. Representatives from a dozen species had gathered in the Grand Hall to observe the progress of the current cohort and to witness demonstrations of interspecies cooperation. Banners hung from the ceiling bearing the symbols of worlds scattered across the galaxy, and the air hummed with the quiet conversations of diplomats and military leaders who had traveled great distances to attend. Elena stood among her fellow cadets in the front rows, dressed in the formal uniform that had been specially tailored to fit her human frame. She could feel the eyes of the representatives studying her, the lone human in a sea of towering aliens. Some looked curious. Most looked skeptical. A few looked openly amused that such a small creature had been allowed to attend such a prestigious institution. Instructor Velmus called the assembly to order, and the hall fell silent as the ancient Vreth began to speak about the importance of unity among the species of the Galactic Concordat. "We face threats that no single species can overcome alone," Velmus declared. "The Academy exists to forge bonds between worlds, to create leaders who understand that our strength lies in our diversity. Each species brings unique capabilities to our alliance, and together we are greater than the sum of our parts." Elena listened carefully, appreciating the sentiment even as she knew that many in the room did not truly believe it. The assembly continued with various presentations and demonstrations. A team of Vreth cadets showcased their combat formations. Sundari students performed a display of coordinated telepathic communication. Korathi warriors demonstrated their hunting techniques, moving with a speed and power that drew appreciative murmurs from the crowd. And then came the time for questions and open discussion. This was the moment Elena had been quietly dreading and eagerly anticipating in equal measure. A Korathi representative rose from the audience, a decorated general whose scales bore the marks of countless battles. "I have a question about the human cadet," the general announced, and the entire hall turned to look at Elena. "Our intelligence reports indicate that humans come from a tempered world with mild conditions. How can such a species contribute to the physical demands of interspecies peacekeeping?" Before Instructor Velmus could respond, Thrakvolum stepped forward with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "If I may speak, General," the massive Korathi cadet said, bowing his head in respect to his species' military leader. "I have trained alongside the human for many weeks now, and I can tell you that she does not belong here." A murmur ran through the crowd, and Elena felt every eye in the room lock onto her. "She is small and weak," Thrakvolum continued, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "She cannot keep pace with our training exercises. She cannot contribute to team objectives. Her presence here is a political gesture, nothing more, and it undermines the integrity of this academy." He turned to face Elena directly, his massive form towering over her like a mountain of scale and muscle. "I mean no disrespect to the human personally," he said with false courtesy. "But facts are facts. Humans evolved on a paradise world where survival was easy. They never developed the strength or speed or endurance necessary to stand among apex species. For the good of the Academy and the Concordat, I formally request that the human cadet be removed from the program before she gets hurt." The silence that followed was absolute. Elena could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She could feel the weight of judgment pressing down upon her from every direction. The Korathi general was nodding slowly, apparently agreeing with Thrakvol's assessment. Several Vreth representatives clicked their mandibles in what seemed like approval. Even the Sundari, who prided themselves on their emotional control, failed to hide their relief that someone had finally said what they had all been thinking. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Elena stepped forward, and her movement drew a surprised gasp from the nearest students who had expected her to shrink away in shame. "May I speak?" she asked, her voice calm and steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. Instructor Velmus tilted its head in what Elena had learned to recognize as curiosity. "You may," the ancient breath replied. Elena turned to face the assembly, making sure to meet the eyes of as many beings as she could. "Cadet Thrake Volum has made his assessment based on assumptions," she began. "He assumes that because I am small, I am weak. He assumes that because my world has temperate conditions, it produced a fragile species. He assumes that because I have not demonstrated my physical capabilities, I do not have any." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Every species in this room has underestimated humans since we first made contact with the galactic community," she continued. "You see our size and assume we are prey. You learn about our homeworld and assume it was gentle to us. You watch us choose kindness and assume we do so because we have no other option." Elena took a deep breath. "I would like to correct these assumptions," she said. "I would like to offer a demonstration of human capability, here and now, in front of this entire assembly." The murmur that ran through the crowd was louder this time, filled with confusion and disbelief. Thrakvalum let out a barking laugh that echoed off the high ceiling. "A demonstration?" he repeated, spreading his 6 limbs wide in a gesture of mockery. "Demonstrate what, little one? What could you possibly show us that would change our minds? You are half my height and a fraction of my weight. You are soft where I am armored. You are slow where I am fast." He stepped closer to her, and his shadow fell across her like a darkness meant to intimidate. "I am the largest predator in this entire class," he declared. "My ancestors hunted creatures that would give your species nightmares. What demonstration could you offer that would impress me?" Elena looked up at him, this mountain of scale and claw and tooth, and she did not flinch. "Hold still," she said quietly. "This will only take a moment." The confusion on Thrakevol's face was almost comical. "What?" he asked. "I said hold still," Elena repeated. "And try not to struggle. I would hate for you to get hurt." The laughter that erupted from the crowd was mocking and cruel. They thought she had lost her mind. They thought the pressure had broken her. They had no idea what was about to happen. Elena rolled her shoulders and approached the massive Korathi. She was about to change everything they thought they knew about humanity. Elena Vasquez stood before the largest predator in her class and felt a strange calm settle over her mind. She had visualized this moment 1,000 times during her years of preparation on Earth. She had trained for it in secret every single day since arriving at the academy. And now, with the eyes of diplomats and military leaders and fellow cadets all locked upon her, she was ready. Thrakvalum stood motionless, his massive form radiating amusement and contempt as he watched the tiny human approach him. He made no effort to move because he saw no threat. He saw only entertainment. "This should be interesting," someone in the crowd whispered, and scattered laughter followed the comment. Elena ignored them all. She focused entirely on the task before her, running through the mechanics in her mind, the way her coaches had taught her back home. Feet shoulder width apart. Core engaged. Back straight. Breathe. She positioned herself directly in front of Thrakvalum and wrapped her arms around his midsection, her hands barely able to meet on the far side of his enormous torso. The Korathi looked down at her with something between amusement and pity. "What are you doing, little human?" he asked. "Are you trying to hug me? I did not realize your species showed affection in such strange ways." More laughter from the crowd. Elena did not respond. She adjusted her grip, finding the optimal position based on Threkvol's center of gravity. She bent her knees and dropped her hips, loading power into her legs the way she had done thousands of times in training. She took one final breath, filling her lungs completely. And then she lifted. The laughter died instantly. Threkvol's 6 limbs left the ground, dangling uselessly in the air as Elena hoisted his 900-pound body upward with a controlled, powerful movement. She straightened her legs and her back, bringing the massive Korathi up and up until his feet hung a full 6 inches above the polished floor. The silence in the grand hall was absolute. Not a single being moved. Not a single being breathed. Every eye was locked on the impossible sight before them. A human woman, barely 5.5 feet tall, holding the largest predator in the academy suspended in the air through nothing but raw physical strength. Elena held him there. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Her muscles burned with the effort, but her face remained calm and determined. Threkvol's eyes had gone wide with shock, and his mouth hung open in an expression that might have been comical if the moment had not been so profound. He tried to speak, but no words came out. 4 seconds. 5 seconds. Elena could have dropped him then, could have let him fall to the ground in a heap of scale and disbelief. But that was not the point of this demonstration. The point was control. The point was to show that humans were not simply strong but disciplined, not merely powerful but precise. She lowered him slowly and carefully, setting his 6 feet back on the ground with the same gentle control that she had used to lift him. Then she stepped back, her breathing only slightly heavier than normal, and looked out at the stunned assembly. Humans evolved on a world you classified as a paradise, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent hall. You made that classification because our planet has liquid water and breathable atmosphere and temperatures within a comfortable range. You assumed that these conditions made life easy for us. She paused, letting her words sink in. You were wrong. Earth has gravity that is 40% stronger than the Korathi homeworld, she continued. Every step we take, every movement we make, we are fighting against a force that would crush most species. Our muscles develop density that your scientists have never documented because they never thought to look. Our bones grew thick and strong to support us against a planet that constantly tried to drag us down. The assembly remained frozen, hanging on her every word. We evolved as persistence predators, Elena said. Do you know what that means? It means we did not evolve to be faster than our prey or stronger than our prey. We evolved to outlast them. We would chase an animal for hours, sometimes days, across plains and through forests and over mountains until its heart gave out from exhaustion. We are not sprinters, we are marathoners, and our ancestors ran down creatures that would terrify the most fearsome hunters of any world in this concordat. She looked directly at Threkvolun, who still had not moved from where she had set him down. You see us as small and assume that makes us weak, she said. But we are small because we do not need to be large. Every ounce of our mass is optimized for endurance and strength. We are the most efficient predators our planet ever produced, and our planet was not the paradise you imagine. Elena stepped forward, addressing the entire assembly now. Earth tried to kill us every single day of our evolutionary history. Disease, predators, natural disasters, ice ages, heat waves, we survived them all. Not because we were the biggest or the fastest or the most dangerous, but because we refused to give up. We broke our bones and kept fighting. We suffered wounds that should have killed us and survived anyway. We are alive today because our ancestors were too stubborn to die. She could see the shock spreading through the crowd as her words challenged everything they had believed about humanity. You asked what I could demonstrate, she said, turning back to Threkvol. I have demonstrated that your largest predator weighs nothing to a trained human. I have demonstrated that size means nothing without the density and efficiency that Earth forced us to develop. And I have demonstrated that humans are not here as a political gesture. Her voice grew harder, stronger, filled with the pride of her entire species. We are here because we earned our place among the stars, the same way we earned our place at the top of our food chain, through sheer relentless determination. We are here because the galaxy needs to understand that underestimating humans is a mistake that other species have made before. She let that statement hang in the air for a moment. None of them exist anymore. The gasp that ran through the crowd told her that her message had landed. We come in peace because we choose peace, Elena concluded. We offer friendship because we value connection. We show kindness because we have learned that cooperation achieves more than conflict. But never, ever mistake our kindness for weakness. We are kind because we can afford to be. We are gentle because we have the strength to choose gentleness. And if pushed, if threatened, if given no other option, we will remind the galaxy exactly what kind of predators we are. She stepped back and clasped her hands behind her back in a formal posture. That concludes my demonstration, she said calmly. I hope it has been educational. The silence stretched for an eternal moment. And then Instructor Velmus began to click its mandibles in what Elena had learned was the breath equivalent of applause. The sound spread through the hall as other species joined in with their own forms of appreciation. A thunderous wave of recognition that washed over Elena like a tide. She had done it. She had changed everything. The aftermath of Elena's demonstration rippled across the galaxy like a stone dropped into a still pond. Within hours, recordings of the event had been transmitted to every major world in the Galactic Concordat. And within days, those recordings had been viewed by billions of beings who had never given humanity a second thought. The small human woman lifting the massive Korathi predator became the most watched footage in galactic history. Played and replayed and analyzed by scientists and military strategists and ordinary citizens who could not believe what their eyes were showing them. But for Elena, the most important changes happened not across the stars, but right there in the Grand Hall, in the moments immediately following her demonstration. Thrak Volum stood motionless for a long time after she had set him down, his massive form frozen in place while his mind struggled to process what had just happened. He had been lifted. He, the largest predator in the academy, the pride of his clan, the warrior whose strength had never been questioned, had been picked up by a creature half his size and held in the air like a hatchling. Among the Korathi, such an event demanded one of two responses. The first was vendetta, a sworn oath of violence against the one who had demonstrated dominance. The second was acknowledgement, a ritual acceptance of the other being's superior capability. The choice said everything about a Korathi's character. Vendetta was the path of wounded pride, of shame transformed into rage. Acknowledgement was the path of wisdom, of learning from defeat and growing stronger for it. Thrak Volum was silent for so long that Elena began to wonder if she had made a terrible mistake. Perhaps she had misjudged the Korathi culture. Perhaps she had just created an enemy who would hunt her across the stars. Then the massive predator moved. He lowered himself, bending his 6 limbs until his great scaled head was level with Elena's. And then he bowed. The gesture was unmistakable, a formal acknowledgement recognized by every species in the Concordat. I was wrong, Thrak Volum said, his deep voice carrying across the still silent hall. You are Apex. Your species has earned its place among the predators of the galaxy, and I am honored to share this academy with you. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Thank you, she said simply. I hope we can be allies from this day forward. More than allies, Thrak Volum replied, rising back to his full height. Among my people, when one warrior acknowledges another, they become packmates. We hunt together, We fight together. We protect each other until death. If you will accept me, human Elena, I will be your packmate." Elena extended her hand in the human gesture of friendship. "I accept," she said. Thrakavon wrapped one of his massive clawed hands around hers with surprising gentleness, and something shifted in the room as two species that had seemed so different found common ground. The following weeks brought change upon change. Instructor Velmus immediately requested Elena's complete biometric data, wanting to understand exactly how a human had accomplished what she had accomplished. The Academy's medical staff ran test after test, scanning her muscles and measuring her bone density and analyzing her cardiovascular system. Their findings shocked the entire scientific community. Human muscle fibers were packed more densely than any previously documented species. Human bones contained a mineral composition that provided exceptional strength without excessive weight. Human cardiovascular endurance exceeded theoretical limits by margins that forced scientists to revise their models. And perhaps most significantly, human bodies recover from damage at rates that seemed almost impossible. "Your species is remarkable," the chief medical officer told Elena after reviewing the results. "You are built for sustained effort under high stress. Your ancestors must have faced extraordinary challenges to develop such capabilities." "They did," Elena confirmed. "Earth was never the paradise you imagined. It was a crucible that forged us into what we are." The Galactic Concordat quietly issued a reclassification order. Earth was no longer listed as a temperate garden world in the official databases. Its new designation was Class 4 Death World, a category reserved for planets that produced exceptionally dangerous life forms. The change in classification brought immediate consequences. Trade agreements were revised. Diplomatic protocols were updated. Military assessments of humanity's potential were completely rewritten. And applications from other humans to join galactic institutions increased tenfold as Elena's demonstration proved that humanity could compete on the cosmic stage. Back at the Academy, Elena's life transformed completely. No one whispered behind her back anymore. No one refused to work with her in joint exercises. Instead, she found herself in constant demand, with students from every species seeking her as a partner and requesting her insights on human capabilities. Thrakvalum became her most loyal companion, the massive Karathi taking his role as packmate with complete seriousness. They trained together every day, and Elena taught him techniques from Earth's martial arts while he taught her the hunting strategies of his people. Their friendship became legendary at the Academy, a symbol of what was possible when species looked beyond their assumptions and saw each other clearly. Even the Sindari, who had always seemed so aloof and superior, began to approach Elena with new respect. "We sensed your strength from the beginning," one of them admitted telepathically. "But we assumed it was a mental strength, not a physical one. We did not realize humans possessed both in such measure." On the final day of her first term, Elena sat in her quarters composing a message to send back to Earth. She wanted the people of her homeworld to know what she had accomplished and what it meant for humanity's future. But finding the right words proved difficult. How could she explain the weight of galactic assumptions she had carried on her shoulders? How could she describe the moment when those assumptions had shattered? How could she convey the pride she felt not just for herself but for every human who had ever been underestimated? In the end, she kept her message simple. "We are no longer invisible," she wrote. "They see us now. They see what we truly are, and they will never underestimate us again. Other humans will follow me to the stars, and they will arrive with a reputation that I helped build. They will be respected before they ever speak a word, because the galaxy now knows what our species is capable of. We chose kindness not because we had no other option, but because we had the strength to choose it. We offered peace not because we feared war, but because we had earned the right to prefer peace." We are small and we are gentle and we are kind. And we are the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever encountered. Not because we want to hurt anyone, but because we can and we choose not to. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us strong. She sent the message and looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, new humans were preparing to follow in her footsteps. They would arrive in institutions across the galaxy, and they would carry with them the legacy she had created. They would face their own challenges and earn their own respect. And together, step by step, demonstration by demonstration, humanity would claim its rightful place among the stars. Elena smiled and turned away from the window. She had a training session with Threg Volum in 20 minutes, and she did not want to be late. After all, there was always more to learn, always more to prove, always more to become. That was the human way. That had always been the human way. And now the galaxy knew it too.